people are just scared to talk about our lost babies, and they're scared to acknowledge grief, because it's a really, it's uncomfortable, it's bloody awful, and it's not something that we're used to kind of navigating. So that's why I love, talking about Elizabeth, obviously, but particularly like the Say Their Name campaign, because it gives us in the bereaved community an opportunity to be able to talk about our babies.
Welcome back to the No Foot Too Small podcast. My name is Jackie Selsky. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at No Foot Too Small. And I'm joined today by
Robin Boudreau, co-founder and executive director, No Foot Too Small.
And today is a super special day.
It is an incredibly special day.
It's Say Their Name Day, which is an international campaign and movement to encourage families from the lost community to honor their angels by saying their name, remembering them, honoring their lives and their legacies in a public way to keep the conversation and raise awareness around pregnancy and infant loss. And so we celebrated this special day last year, and to make it even more special this year, if you haven't picked up on it yet, if you're watching the video, we have some special new swag that is available right now in the store on nofoottosmall.org. And maybe Robin can hold it up and model it a little bit for us over there. Brand new hoodies in the merch store.
Super soft also.
Super cozy.
Really cute little drawstrings. But most importantly is really just the messaging, right? The encouragement to say their name.
Yeah. So we hope you'll head over there after the episode, though, because here's what's extra special today. This movement was started halfway around the globe in Australia. And so today we have our very first international guest from the organization that came up with the idea for Say Their Name. We are so excited to be joined today by Fiona Ellis-Jones, who is the head of Australia's radio network and an ambassador for the organization Red Nose. So welcome, Fiona. I know you go by Fee, so we're going to call you Fee because you are just already part of our No Foot Too Small family. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jackie and Robin. I'm so glad to be on with you guys.
We could listen to her all day, couldn't we?
I know. The accent is my favorite.
This is exciting.
So what time is it by you right now? We are filming in the afternoon, and it is not even the same day for you, correct?
It is a very reasonable 8:36 in the morning here.
So as we prep for dinner, you prep with coffee.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've got my coffees lined up. I'm all ready to go.
Great. And where in Australia are you located?
So I'm in Sydney. I split my time between Sydney and Hobart, though, and Hobart is a little city. It's one of our smallest capital cities in Tasmania, which is an island off the bottom of Australia. So, yeah, I do a week here and then a week in Sydney for work.
Oh, wow.
How cool is that?
It's a bit really of commuting.
Cool. Yeah, we should have maybe planned to have this in person in Australia next time.
Next year.
You are very welcome, guys.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Well, do you want to get us started with the interview today, Rob?
Absolutely. Fee, as the founder of No Foot Too Small, what's always most important to me are our stories, right? What brought us here? What brought us together today? And so if you don't mind me asking, I would love to hear your story.
Yes, thank you, guys. And I love sharing my story because it makes me think about Elizabeth, and it kind of, in a way, brings her to life, and it makes me feel like she didn't, live and die in vain. So I'm always really, really happy and honoured to talk about Elizabeth. So 3 years ago now, I was pregnant with what we thought was our fourth child, but I actually felt pregnant with twins.
Oh, my goodness.
A little boy and a little girl. So our son is Banksi and our daughter is Elizabeth. Banksi was twin A, Elizabeth was twin B. And the pregnancy was all going to plan. I mean, it was high risk, obviously, because I was 38 at the time, so I was a little bit older and I was carrying twins. So it was always high risk, but the babies were growing and everything was fine, and we were really excited. We had our, a deposit on a big 7-seater car. We had our cots, 2 cots set up. And then it was at our 20-week scan, although it kind of didn't become obvious until a couple of weeks after that she was very small.
Sure.
And at first they were like, look, she's growing and she's in proportion. She'll be okay. She'll just be small, so we'll monitor it.
Sure.
But then really quickly, like within a couple of weeks after that, they worked out that she was not growing pretty much at all. She was in the first percentile at that point, and they said she would not survive. They didn't think she'd survive in utero. They said there was a very small chance that she would be born, but she'd be a very sick little girl and would pass away. So it was a bit scary. It was, anybody who's been in that situation, when they're told that their baby won't survive, it's traumatic. You go through like all those different stages where you think at first, there's something wrong. I was frantically Googling. I'm like, there's got to be a way to save her. And then you kind of go into the denial. And then I guess for us, because I was carrying twins, it then went into how do we save this other baby? So at the time we were trying to get to kind of 28 weeks so we could deliver them both. They told us that was going to be really risky though, because the little boy baby, they said Elizabeth would not survive, a few probably hours. And they said if you go in that soon, it's going to be really risky for your little boy as well. And she died at exactly the point in the pregnancy that they said would optimize his survival. So we didn't have to make any horrible decisions about terminating her, which was obviously really risky for him as well. And we didn't have to deliver both of them early, which would have meant that he could have had serious long-term damage. So that was a gift we still are very grateful for that she did for Banksi. And he survived, and he's a thriving 3-year-old now. He's absolutely gorgeous. So that's our kind of our grief story. And I guess the uniqueness of it was the fact that for a while I was carrying her still, and trying to bring him as close as we could to term.
How many weeks were you carrying her?
Couple of months.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
How many weeks did you carry her after you knew she was gone?
So I was 26. So I carried her. He was 38 weeks, 37 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
And it was a very odd period, because after you guys, as you guys know, when you lose a baby, there's this almost primal urge to birth that baby,
Yes.
to hold that baby. And I couldn't do that.
Right.
So that was really, it was a very confusing time of my life, like the worst ever
Absolutely.
of my life. I just remember just sitting there, just going, just like comatose. We do something and just wake me up when this is over. And then having to be strong for the other kids and be physically and mentally healthy for the other baby. It was unique.
I know that you didn't have a choice in this, but I applaud you for that. I remember when I learned that my son Bo was dying inside of me, and I thought, how do I go to work? How do I care for my daughter Bella? How do I do everyday life with a baby that is dying right inside of me? And for you, I was only pregnant with one son at the time. I did not have twins, and so I didn't have to let him pass and then carry another baby for 12 weeks. That's incredible, Fee.
Yeah, I had a lot of support. I reached out very early on to Red Nose, thanks to the care of my obstetrician and the midwives, and they could see that I needed someone to talk to be able to process what had happened. And they were amazing. Like they gave me counselling to try and deal with the grief. They recognised that it would be hard to kind of process what had happened to Elizabeth until after the birth. And then I was just in almost like this holding pattern. And then they helped me with things like, being able to arrange like funeral arrangements for her, do all the massive amounts of paperwork that you have to do when you have a stillborn baby. And then the most important thing that I kind of got during that period was just how to prepare mentally for the birth. Because I was very adamant that I wanted to give birth in the same way that I had for my other children, which was a natural birth. And obviously there was a lot of risk because I was carrying the twins anyway. So yeah, they helped me to prepare, and my husband to prepare psychologically for what would happen and how she would look, and just just be ready for bringing our twins into the world.
I am so glad that you found them. The episode that we actually just dropped yesterday was of a couple, Haley and Caleb Admire, and I will never forget, this is very similar. Haley showing up at one of our support groups, one of our loss groups, while she was still pregnant. And so similarly to you, her message that evening was, I know I'm going to need you, right? I know Matthew is not going to survive. And so really leaning into No Foot Too Small for the duration of that pregnancy. I think that's also a really difficult thing to do. So kudos to you for having the courage to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I think we talk a lot at No Foot Too Small too about identifying where the gaps in care are, right? When a family is going through this with their medical team, and then there seems to sometimes be a gap in connecting that family with the resources that they are going to need after the loss of that child. And so it's really awesome. And one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you today was, we are in one part of the world. Is it the same in other parts of the world? Is it different? What can we learn from your experience halfway across the globe in how to do that better and how to make sure we're getting these resources in front of our families sooner so that they feel more prepared? And so your story is a beautiful example of how that can go very well so that you feel empowered and equipped to navigate what's coming next. So I appreciate you sharing that part of it too, and how many people were part of that for you, and the support and the need for that support so early, because that's part of our No Foot Too Small mission too, is making sure that we're trying to fill that gap for families going forward.
Do you know what I think so much of it is just having these kind of conversations, normalizing the fact that women miscarry, they have stillborn babies, horrifically, women deal with infant death, they deal with SIDS. And I just don't understand why there is still that stigma about it, because the biggest support for me during that period and then after the birth was being able to talk about Elizabeth. And it was funny because people didn't know how to treat me. Like through, when we lost her, that kind of few month period was COVID. So it was actually, the timing was good. We could just huddle down as a family and I didn't have to face everybody. And when I did see people, my closest friends, I told what had happened, but other people would see me in the street and I was huge, I was carrying twins. Everyone knew I was expecting twins. And it was difficult at that time because I'm like, the babies, you must be so excited. And, but after the birth, we put an announcement out just basically saying, we welcomed our twins. Banksy's perfect and he's here, but we'd lost Elizabeth. Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Used to talking about it.
No.
But it was kind of nice because we just said, you know what, here's what's happened. We're just going to withdraw for a little bit and just heal and spend some time with Banksy. But people didn't know how to recognize her. A lot of people were just like, yay, welcome, congratulations, Banksy. And I recognize him, which was just so beautiful. And that's what you do when a baby comes. But I remember feeling at the time like, there were two.
Absolutely.
She was there too. She existed as well. And there are a few people who would send flowers for her, or they'd make a donation to Red Nose, which was just so special to have that done in her name. A couple of people sent us blankets and little clothes for Elizabeth. And looking back now, I think all I wanted was for her just to be recognised as well. And I don't, people deal with grief in funny ways and different ways, and I absolutely can't judge it. And before I went through this, I probably would have as well. But I think people are just scared to talk about our lost babies, and they're scared to acknowledge grief because it's a really, it's uncomfortable, it's bloody awful,
right.
And it's not something that we're used to kind of navigating. So that's why I love, talking about Elizabeth, obviously, but particularly like the Say Their Name campaign, because it gives us in the bereaved community an opportunity to be able to talk about our babies and to do so in a way like, I'm sorry, aside from my tears now, normally when I talk about Elizabeth, it's I'm really happy and I'm joyful because it reminds me that she was here and that she made such an impact to our lives. And we've got Banksi because of her. So it's a really happy story for me. And I love being able to talk about her now.
But that is the perfect example of joy and grief coexisting. And I think until you've been in this place, you don't necessarily understand that, but it's perfectly normal and acceptable and wonderful for the collision of both.
Yeah. And that's our mission with this podcast, is to hold space for both. And I think I was really drawn to that in your story, actually, online, that you touched on that you've never felt such immense joy and grief at the same time. And so, that's the heart of what we're doing at No Foot Too Small. So I think what you're touching on is really the heart of today's episode too, and the significance in sharing their names and sharing their stories. And so if you don't mind, I'd love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about Red Nose. We don't have Red Nose here in the United States, so people are probably like, what are we talking about? So if you don't mind just sharing a little more about the organization, that would be great.
Yeah, so Red Nose is a charity in Australia. It's a very, very well-known charity, and they're really unique because, as far as I'm aware, they're the only non-for-profit in this country that deals with miscarriage, stillbirth, infant death, SIDS. Their primary focus is to support bereaved parents through counselling, through 24-hour support, through peer support, through some of the logistical helps that I told you guys about that I received in terms of being able to navigate, funerals, autopsies. And they also do a lot of research into miscarriage, stillbirth, infant death, and in particular SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome here in Australia. So they're a really unique charity. I can't remember exactly who put me on to Red Nose, but I'm pretty sure it was either my obstetrician or one of the midwives. All the support that I got was free. I didn't have to pay for anything. And I guess the biggest value for me was being able to talk to women who had been through what I'd been through. So they gave me a peer support a team member, volunteer to be able to deal with. And I just remember asking her at the time, like, when am I going to be normal again? Am I ever going to feel okay again? Like, when am I going to enjoy my kids again and wake up and just not have that horrible feeling, in the early days when you'd wake up and you'd remember and you'd be like, oh my gosh. And I just wanted to know, like, when will I be okay? So to be able to talk to someone that was a couple of years down the line was very reassuring for me, probably the most reassuring part of that grief journey, that initial grief journey. So Red Nose do a couple of really big initiatives during the year. They have a Red Nose Day. It's been around for decades in this country. Little kids will put red noses on and raise money for Red Nose. And then more recently, Say Their Name Day. And Say Their Name Day, which is today, is all about just basically reducing that stigma and isolation for bereaved parents, not just women, but men as well. They offer a lot of support for dads, and we don't talk enough about a dad's grief after stillbirth or infant death. So they really build a community of other bereaved mums, kind of like what you guys are doing. I remember in those early days, like getting onto to forums online and different Facebook groups, and just desperate to be able to talk to people that have been through what we've been through, but were further down the line and had come through it, and just basically hearing that reassurance that you'll be okay. And now for me, it's more about just being able to recognise her and all the other beautiful babies that were taken from us too early.
So what happens on Say Their Name Day? How do families participate? What does Red Nose offer special that day? Walk us through what the day looks like in Australia.
I guess Say Their Name Day is just a way for the whole community to kind of come together and celebrate their little bubs. There are a number of walks that happen. A lot of our community will just kind of light a candle at night and maybe post a tribute on socials or online for their little ones. There's no real kind of prescribed way to celebrate. For me, what I do now, obviously working in media, I really like the opportunity to be able to go out and tell Elizabeth's story and raise awareness to not only the wonderful work that Red Nose does, but also just to the bereaved community and the a lot of the questions that I get during that work is from people who don't know how to help a friend or a loved one who is going through stillbirth or neonatal death. So it's just being able to just almost in a way destigmatize it and being able to help people to understand that, it's a really powerful act of kindness to be able to mention somebody's baby. When people talk to me now and they mention Elizabeth's name, like I kind of do it like,
it'll light up.
It's hard to explain, but it floors me, but in a really good way. And I respect so much that people would still talk about her and think about her 3 years on. So yeah, and obviously the other thing that comes with awareness is raising really important funds for Red Nose here in Australia, to be able to keep doing their wonderful work for women, because you guys mentioned that there's a gap in the system, and I don't want to start comparing healthcare systems because I know you guys have your own gaps, but there really is a very important role that I think non-for-profits like Red Nose do play in being able to help women, particularly in that immediate aftermath after something so devastating.
I love that you continue to talk about changing the dialogue or opening the dialogue. It's interesting, when Ryan and I founded this organization so long ago, the pillars of the mission were to celebrate angels, unite families, and build birthing and bereavement suites. But over the last decade, I have said over and over again, if the one and only thing we ever do is change the dialogue around pregnancy and infant loss, we will have been successful. How do we open this conversation? How do we normalize loss? Because that is the first step in the healing. Mm-hmm. Coming home after losing a child, an infant, is a very hopeless, isolating place to be, particularly if you feel like you're the only one who's experienced such a devastating loss. So I think this day, the Say Their Name Day, is so powerful. And I'm so grateful to Red Nose for really launching this campaign for all of us.
Yeah, me too. How many years has it been now since it was started?
Sorry, what was that?
How many years has it been since the campaign was?
It's been 3 years. Yeah, it's been 3 years. And I think a lot's changed in that time. Like in Australia, we're having the conversation at a kind of federal level, we're having it at an employer level, and we're having it, a kind of one-on-one conversations like what we're doing now. But I think it's, and with my media hat on, I think we've all got a responsibility to destigmatize and to start the dialogue. And let me give you some examples. When I lost Elizabeth, I was working at the ABC, which is our national broadcaster, and generally, our public sector jobs have a lot more generous leave entitlements for workers. So I had maternity leave, paid maternity leave for Banksi, and I also had bereavement leave for Banksi. If it was a single pregnancy, I would have at the time got full maternity leave entitlements for Elizabeth. And I think that's really important, because and all employers should be offering that, because you do need that time to heal after something so traumatic. And if I was, back at work a couple of weeks later, I don't think I would have survived, to be honest. So I think that, we have a responsibility at that level to support women and just having that conversation and updating policies in a way almost destigmatizes it. At a federal level, we need more support in our hospitals. We need to, increase funding to organisations that provide that immediate bereavement care. And then at a personal level, like, I think that that it's just so important to have these conversations, and not just, not just within our bereavement community, but to our friends, to our family. We have to like, I find it staggering in 2025 that people still find it difficult to talk about what is so common. In Australia, it's 1 in 100 babies are stillborn.
Right.
It's most people would know somebody
Absolutely.
who has experienced a loss.
Yes.
I was at one of my kids' soccer games the other day, and I was talking to a grandma, and I don't know how we got onto it, but she said I had a stillbirth 46 years ago. She never got to hug her baby. Tear up thinking about it.
It's awful.
It's still with her. Mm-hmm. She was in tears 46 years later. So it's something that never leaves you, and I feel very lucky that it happened to me in an era where we are so much more comfortable to talk about it, and hospital staff are taught best practice in terms of letting us bond with our babies and being able to have mementos and photos and understand the immediate grief that we are going through. But man, we've still got so far to go.
We do. I think the silver lining is that story is a perfect example that we've made progress. Because I've also sat with a lot of those women who lost 30, 40, 50 years ago. And to your point, they're still grieving. Yeah. In many cases, they never saw the baby, right? Not only did they not hold it, they never saw the baby. And so the good news is we're making progress, but there is a long way to go, I would say, in our broader communities.
Yeah, and to normalize all types of loss. I think we have a long way to go there as well. And I think of our No Foot Too Small community, and we see a growing number of families joining our family who have experienced first trimester loss. And so those are families who've never been able to see or hold or have living time with their child, and maybe they haven't named their child. And so I'm curious what you and the Red Nose team say to those families. How do you encourage them to participate in a day like today where maybe they haven't chosen to name their angel, but still deserve a platform and a space to share their story and continue their legacy? So what does that look like for those families?
I think what that says, and I completely understand this, is that everybody grieves in different ways. My husband, and I don't know if it was the case with you guys too, and men obviously process grief differently, but he internalized a lot of it. He certainly doesn't come out on national TV and do this kind of stuff and talk about her. He remembers her in his own way. I don't think that's just a male thing. I think it's just his personality is so different. It doesn't mean that he was less impacted by what happens. It doesn't mean that he loved her any less. It doesn't mean that he thinks about her any less. He just deals with what happened in a different way. And I appreciate that, not everybody wants to, go out and talk about something so personal and something so awful that happened to them. And that's okay too. There's no right or wrong way to grieve or to remember your baba. But I think that for me, just making sure that they know they're supported and that there's a community of women out there that have been through what they're going through, and again that it does get easier and that they'll be okay. And I remember at the time someone said to me, I was like, am I going to get over this? Like, am I going to be a functioning member of society, get a functioning mother? How am I ever going to go back to work again? And they said the grief doesn't shrink. You just grow around it. You just grow around it. And I get that now. A few years on, probably wouldn't have understood it. Well, definitely didn't understand at the time. But that's why I think it's just so important that people feel like if they do want to talk and they do want to take part in these kind of initiatives, they can. And if they don't want to and that's not for them, then they've just got to find their way to celebrate their baby.
To celebrate. Oh, that's music to my ears.
I know. That's literally the word in our mission is celebrate angels. So
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, we've been talking about changing the dialogue. The conversations that you're having at Red Nose and in Australia 5 years from now, what does the world look like if we're really changing the narrative and changing the dialogue? What do we hope to see?
Okay, I reckon it's twofold. I reckon in 5 years, gosh, I would love to see a reduction in that 1 in every 100 babies that is stillborn. I really, really would love to see more private, but also government investment in, looking at the causes of stillbirth, trying to reduce. For Elizabeth's case, it was literally that her placenta, her cord was slightly off center. So more of the oxygen, blood flow, nutrients, everything went to Banksi. So I would love to be able to know that there is better technology, and that we make advances in medical science so that we actually do reduce the risk of stillbirth, miscarriage, infant death. And that also comes alongside better education campaigns. And that's something else that Red Nose does. Things like safe sleeping on your side. A lot of the things that I, even as a fourth-time mum, I wasn't aware of, and not that any of that could have changed Elizabeth's outcome, but whenever I have pregnant friends, I use that as an opportunity, to have an education piece about how they should be sleeping, and also monitoring their fetal movements. And you guys know, if they've got a mum's intuition is next level, right? And if they haven't felt their baby move, then go to the hospital, advocate for yourself, sure. Advocate for your baby. Don't be turned away. Demand an ultrasound. So yeah, that's the kind of education piece. 5 years from now, in terms of the dialogue and that social piece, well, look, I just hope that it's normalized, and that we understand that women grieve differently, but that we recognize every baby, whether or not they make it earthside or not. And can I also add on that social piece? I'd love for employers everywhere, universally, Australia, the US, anywhere in the world, to be able to recognise that a stillbirth, a miscarriage, is still a loss, and that a woman needs time to grieve. And even if it's not full maternity or paternity, entitlements, that they are able to financially have that time to heal, and they aren't pushed back into work. So that's kind of where I reckon we should be in 5 years.
I think that's some great reckoning. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I would say in line with how we feel. Correct. Too, which is kind of the beautiful, but maybe the sad part of it all, right? Like that we're talking to you. It's a completely different day. You're on the other side of the earth, and we just, our hearts are in alignment with what needs to change, right? And our feelings are the same. So, and I think there's something really beautiful in that, and there's power in that. And I think as the marketing person here who just came across the Say Their Name campaign last year on a whim, I wasn't looking for it. I didn't know it existed. Social media is so powerful. We've talked a lot about that in some of our episodes as well. And so I didn't know it was only 3 years old. So for us to come across that in year 2 and now be making it an even bigger celebration for our families in year 3, because maybe a few parents in Australia thought this is important and we need to do something. And for that to be a global movement in 3 years is incredible, I think.
It really is.
It is like a club, isn't it? And it's not lost on me either that we are completely on the other side of the world, but we have a shared understanding and commonality that I think you can only get, sadly, by going through something so awful. And I find that all the time when I meet people, not just within like bereavement circles, but if I meet people at work or in social circles, and they tell me that they've been through something similar, there's just this unspoken bond.
It is.
And you just get it.
Do you know what we call this club at No Foot Too Small?
What is it?
So one of our lost moms, who's part of our No Foot Too Small community, she's actually out of Minnesota, coined this for us 2 or 3 years ago. Worst club, best people. And so we actually do have a campaign that is called Worst Club, Best People, because none of us would want to be a part of this club. But man, we've got some really incredible folks.
That's exactly it. And when you talk about silver linings, and for me, after the worst happened, I was like, right, how can I turn this around? How can this be a good thing? Okay, not a good thing, but how can I reconcile what happened? And I go, Banksy's here. She's given her life for Banksy. That's a huge, like every time I look at that little boy, I'm like, oh my God, thank you, Elizabeth. And the other thing is, well, I've met so many amazing people that have really changed my life that I wouldn't have met if it wasn't for Elizabeth. And then I think, well, how many people have benefited from hearing about her story and being able to normalize what happened. And to me, I go, those three things, I don't know if it makes it like worth going through it, worth what happened, but it makes it a lot easier to reconcile.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of people will apologize, right? They'll say, Robin, I am so sorry about Bo, or I'm so sorry you lost Bo. And I still, all of these years later, I'm not sure I have the exact words, but I always come back to gratitude and what a gift he actually was to us in so many ways, whether it's been the people we've met along the way or the lessons, the changes in ourselves is also an incredible gift. So I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it changes the way I think you deal with people too. You know, like met a lovely guy the other day who lost his wife a couple of years ago to cancer. And I had no qualms at all in saying to him, that is just so awful and I am so sorry for your loss. Whereas probably a few years ago, I would have just skirted around it. I wouldn't have known how to deal with it. But it's made me be a little bit more, a lot more understanding about, you know, the different things that people go through in life and how to treat those people and how to treat those situations. And I guess just, you know, like knowing that it's okay to bring these horrible things up and it's more than okay. Like it's actually you know, comforting in a way. And I know a lot of people, even when they talk to me now, and sometimes I get a bit teary and they're, oh, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. And I'm like, no. I'm just so, like, I'm so happy that you've remembered her and that you've mentioned her by name.
It changes our perspective. It put this type of loss puts the rest of life in perspective, I would say.
Yeah, and I think it makes us more empathetic. But what I think we talk a lot about, which is it's so special to watch, is those of you who are parents who have living children, the way it changes them.
Oh, goodness.
And so we have a special event coming up for our families that is at the baseball. It's at a baseball game. It's just very family friendly. It's one of our kids' favorite events because they get to come celebrate their siblings. So I'm just curious, you know, what are some traditions that you and your family have developed to celebrate Elizabeth? What are the conversations that you have with your kids? And how have you maybe seen her story change them?
That's such a good question. And thank you for thinking of them, because I often think that kids are almost forgotten in the grief journey because there's so much focus on the mum and the birth. And like it impacted my kids in a big way. Like they were 13, 10, 7 at the time, and they were preparing for their little sister. I have 2 boys and a girl, or 3 boys and a girl. So it hit my little girl hard because she came this close to having a sister and then lost it. And got another boy. But we talk a lot about Elizabeth, and you know, I often wonder how Banksy is going to go without having his sister. And you know, twins. There's like I'm not a twin, but I know there's a very distinct bond that twins have, and I wonder how it's going to impact him later, if he's going to feel her loss at all. So we see butterflies and we go, oh, he's Elizabeth. We always put a butterfly on Banksy's cake each year. The first year I did have a pink cake as well. We haven't done that again. That was a good kind of healing for me, I think. But it's, we do a few things. We didn't have a funeral service for her. I've still got her ashes. And a lot of people are like, well, have you still got her ashes? And I'm like, well, I just feel like they're almost like it's not mine to do something with. It's for Banksy. It's his twin. So, we've done a few things, but it's with having him, it kind of brings home the loss in different ways. You know, like I know when he starts school, it's going to be really awful. most of his birthdays, I kind of go into the bedroom and have a little cry for a couple of minutes, and then don't let him see that, and come out and celebrate him. But yeah, it all those kind of milestones where I look at him and I go, oh, there should be two of them. So she has a very, very big part of our family. And again, we're talking about normalizing stillbirth through dialogue, and in a way I kind of try and normalize it with him. He's only 3, so he doesn't understand exactly what happened, but I never want there to be a moment in his life where he goes, right, I get it. That's why we're always talking about Elizabeth. So it's just something that he grows up knowing.
I always say that our children, our earthly children, will grow up to be different humans. I think they'll be more compassionate, right? Partners,
I think so,
friends,
for sure.
parents, coworkers, all of the things, because we've opened this dialogue and kept it alive for them. So.
And I think it's also good for them to see their parents vulnerable, and to talk about grief, and to know that it's okay to be raw and to put it all out there. And my kids saw me at my absolute depths. Again,
absolutely.
It was COVID. I was on bed rest for 6 weeks. I was 100 kilos. I don't know what that is for you guys, but it was huge.
We'll add that to the show notes, the calculation.
Physically and mentally transform in front of them. So I'm sure they'll remember that forever. But you know what? It's life in all of its grittiness, and we can't shield our kids from that.
No.
And I often look at my boys now who are kind of 15, 13, and I go, man, they're going to be such great dads. They're going to be awesome husbands one day if they end up getting married and having kids, because they've just got that understanding that it doesn't always end up the way you plan, and that's okay. You deal
and how
with
beautiful is that?
Mm-hmm.
Just the understanding in and of itself. That's really special.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if you caught our Smiles with the Butterfly story that you shared, but actually Robin's daughter inspired another one of our special family events, and it's called Blooms and Butterflies. And so all of our families come and release butterflies in honor of their angels. And
That's
so
a beautiful idea.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful family event. And so I love that that's a special way that you honor Elizabeth, across the world too. I think that makes it, for some reason, that makes it more special.
Right?
Yeah.
It's undeniable.
Yeah, it is. Well, Fee, we are just so glad you joined us today. This is the question that I typically end all of our interviews with. As Elizabeth's mama, if you could say something to her today, what would that be?
And this is when we always lose it.
We always cry.
Gravy.
Everybody cries. But what would those words be today? And we also say they're different every day. Usually, we have a different message.
Just thank you for giving us Banksi and for letting him survive, and literally giving your life up at the right time that would ensure that he would be okay.
What a gift they both were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Jeez.
I know. Gosh. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
You guys need some overlay or something you can drop in at this point.
Yeah, we do. We've been saying we need tissues on set.
We need tissues, John. We need a filter.
Yeah. We keep forgetting. So, well, gosh, thank you so much. Is there any advice you'd have for our families in our community in ways that we can participate and engage with Red Nose and what your initiatives and your mission right now?
I would absolutely say head to the website. There's saytheirname.org.au, or there's the Red Nose website, and it's full of resources, information, support for those going through stillbirth, miscarriage, infant death, for grandparents, for husbands, for kids. There's just so much information on there. There are a lot of communities as well that you can join. And there's no reason that anybody around the world can't celebrate Say Their Name Day. Just light a candle, go on a walk, do something with your family, any way that you can recognize and again, celebrate your beautiful Bubba.
Well, two things I will say. One, I think Say Their Name Day is going to be so big this year, thanks to Elizabeth and thanks to her brave mom for sharing her with us today, because this this episode is no doubt going to create some ripples and empower our families to bravely share their names. So thank you for that. And then I will end on, secondly, I am stealing Bubba, and I will say Bubba all the time now. I'm using that in addition to Angel, because what a cute,
it's adorable.
Cute word.
Adorable.
Yes. So,
but Fee, you are a beautiful, beautiful soul, and I feel very lucky.
Yeah. Don't make me
I'm
cry
just so
too.
honored.
To have met
Thank
you
you
today.
very much for the opportunity, Jackie and Robert, and thanks for all the good work that you guys are doing.
Oh, same to you. And I hope we can continue these conversations together and find
next year
ways
when we go there.
Yeah. Oh, yes. In person in Sydney next year. But I do hope.
Broadcast from Tassie next year.
Yes. Yeah. I do hope that this relationship continues and we continue to find ways to partner and spread awareness and change the narrative, not just in our small communities, but across the world. And we have the power to do that. And this might be day one, but man, we're going to do big things. So thank you for being part of it with us. We are so grateful.
So keen and so honored, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fee.
Thank you for tuning in to the No Foot Too Small podcast today. We are so grateful that you are celebrating Say Their Name Day with us. We hope you will head over to our social media channels, and if you feel compelled, share your angel's name in the comments on our posts. We hope that you'll check out Red Nose's resources as well. Give them a like and a follow and a shout out in gratitude for helping to start this movement. And maybe check out our cool new merch on the nofittoosmall.org store. Thank you, as always, to Storyline Multimedia for helping us to hold space for these important conversations. And if you are a family who's navigating pregnancy or infant loss, we'd love to connect with you. So please reach out at nofittoosmall.org. We'll catch you at the next episode.